Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us. We are joined by a very special guest today, Jenny Lee Fowler. She is the author of Organic Social Media, and she is also the Director of Social Media Strategy for MIT. Jenny, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, thanks for asking me, Jennifer.
So to get things started, why don't you give us background on what inspired you to write this amazing book?
I think that, there was a lot written about social media marketing with being paid ad and paid social. And there was also this belief I kept on hearing over and over again that, organic is dead, social, you have to do paid. And I didn't believe that. I don't believe that still. I like to say like organic isn't dead. It's just difficult, right? And so it just felt like there was a need for it. And I wasn't sure if anyone else was gonna write the book. And so I think out of need and a desire to educate. So that's where it stems from.
Awesome. And so at MIT, how long have you been
I've been
in charge of their social media for?
Yeah, for going on 10 years now. It goes by fast. Yeah.
So what part of working at MIT has shaped your approach to overall social media strategy?
Yeah, in the jobs that I've had in higher ed, I have to say that I've never had a budget to work with. I mean, I've been doing it for a while. And so I just had to do organic out of necessity. And at this point, 10 years in, I think if there was a campaign or something that we really wanted to do paid social for, I could make the case and I would get the funds. But, there hasn't been a need so far. And I think that, just by necessity, I've learned these little tactics, and I've learned that you can create, engaging content and not have to boost or pay for it. And if you're giving your audience what they want, then they will engage with it and they'll tell you they like it, and you can grow an audience. So I think I very much have seen it happen, and I've had to make it work without funds. And so everything I've learned here and everything I've learned over the years, right, I've written about, and it's in the book, and I like to talk about. So yeah, I would say it's everything I've learned in my career.
Love that. And then we learned about the 5 M's from your book about setting your social media strategy. Outside of that, what do you think are the key components of a successful organic social media strategy?
So the 6 M's, it's funny you say that because it used to be 5. And then the monitoring part got so important that, I added the 6. So it's 6. But so outside of that, what components are really important for
one of those, even from the strategy, from those ones that you outlined, like which one do you think is the most valuable?
Yeah, I think monitoring now these days, which is the last M that I added, is just super, super important. It's not, I think in the early days, we kind of didn't know what social was or what it can do. So we were just posting content and kind of seeing what sticks. But I think we've become more sophisticated in that, we can monitor and listen to our audiences and see what they're saying in the spaces. And we get an idea of what they're thinking and feeling or wanting from you. And so I think that's super, super important. But the metrics are important too, because they really allow you to measure if what you're doing is working or not. And early on, I don't think we did quite as much of that as we should have, but we definitely are. I think we're definitely doing more of that now, which I think is important. So, I mean, it's hard for me to pick. It's like, I don't know if it's like saying if you're Snow White, like which one is your favorite dwarf? Or maybe, I don't know, maybe Snow White has a favorite dwarf, but it's, I think they're all important, but I would say, I would stress those two maybe in the climate that we're in.
Yeah, good point. With the listening, when we talk about what brands should be aware of, obviously with organic social, there's always going to be probably some level of negativity in today's world. What are some things that you look for to let you know if you really missed the mark or if something really needs to be rethought about the direction that you're taking it with content?
Yeah, I find that our audiences pretty much tell me. I feel like they say, oh, this isn't it, or this is not the weekend for this, or, I feel like in the past, if it totally has missed the mark, my audience has been gracious enough to tell me that it's not working. But that's why it's really important to take a listen to the comments and and what they're saying, not just in the comments to your post, but I find that like quote posts are really important to look at because you have to dig one layer deeper. So it's not just right there in the comments, but you have to click on their post, right, to see exactly how they are engaging with your content. And gosh, like I find that like quote posts are 50-50. Like the quote posts are as much negative as they will be positive. So I find that those are really important. But yeah, just if someone is taking the time to engage with it, and they have something to say, usually either negative or positive, I think it's worth giving it a listen to. And that's and the things that they've said have informed future content that we've made as well. So I think it's really, really key to give time to seeing what they say.
And then when you're looking at measuring it, how are you measuring it? How do you know if content has met the mark when you're looking at the numbers? And do you have a favorite type of engagement that you look for?
Yeah, I almost feel like I've built a whole career on just measuring the public interactions, the engagements that everyone can see. So the likes, the comments, the shares. I just really like those engagements because I feel like they're very transparent. And I never want to rely on, say, like a third-party platform that, kind of pulls in content that you might not, or gives you a range of content you might not necessarily see within the platforms themselves, because budgets can be cut, or maybe sometimes platforms are no longer supported. So I always like to make sure that the engagements that I rely on, I can always have access to and are consistent. But really, I find that, the public, the likes, the comments, the shares are really an indicator of what your audience enjoys. And the more something gets likes or engagements, those public engagements, I like to dig into it and see what was it about this post that really people responded to that differed from, like, say, a different post, but maybe it was the same topic but just presented differently. So I try to do what I call a little bit of digital detective work to see what works, and I just try to do more of what works. But really, it depends on what your goal. Like for me, it's always the engagements and trying to do what resonates with our current audience. But if you're trying to grow followers, of course, reach and impressions are important. If you're going for growth, if you're going for connecting people to your website or connecting people to a certain article, of course, click-throughs are more important. So it all depends on your goal. But for me, I feel like, my bread and butter, metric are engagements.
And what is MIT's most engaging social media platform?
That's an interesting question. I would say right now it's LinkedIn, and that is like a 180 from, 6 years ago where it was Twitter, right? And I know people still refer to X as Twitter, but for me, Twitter and X are two totally different platforms. Like the audience is different, the algorithms are different, the audience behavior is different, even platform options are different. So, I don't have any trouble calling it X because it is just such a different platform. But yeah, that's the whole thing, is that, with the culture or with the audience, with the things are not constant in social media. They're constantly changing. And right now, as you and I talk, Jennifer, it is, I would say it's LinkedIn and Instagram. Yeah.
LinkedIn was a slow grower, but it's having a moment for sure. What do you think is a big brand that what is a big mistake that brands make when they're trying to grow organically?
Yeah, I think the thing, here's the thing with organic is it really is a marathon. It takes a long time. And I think a lot of brands are willing to maybe put in the sprint, but they're not willing to put in the time for training for an entire marathon, if I want to keep on going with this metaphor. So I don't think they give their organic posts or organic growth just enough time for it to take hold. So I think that would be what I think is the biggest mistake they're making, because it just, you're growing, if you're growing, if you're not just aiming for followers, you're really trying to grow a community, a group, you're building relationships, even though they're on a digital space, and that just takes time. So.
Yeah, but there's no quick fix to anything. We've talked a lot about search engine optimization and strategies around that. And of course, with that, you really have to put a lot of time and effort into it to really see success with it. And organic can be very much the same way.
Agreed.
What is your approach to creating really engaging organic content? I mean, especially in the visual world that we live in.
Yeah. So I like to optimize, or I find that my job is to optimize content for the specific platform it's in. So, if I'm posting something in TikTok, it's not going to look the same in LinkedIn or Instagram. In fact, our audiences are not the same in the way each platform community uses expressions and language are not the same. So I really believe, you have to optimize for each channel. And I'm not going to put just an image in TikTok. I'm not going to put a vertical video in LinkedIn. I mean, I may, but there's better ways to present your content in LinkedIn. So I think it's really important to optimize. Also, and I mentioned this before, I like to do more of what my audience is telling me it likes, right? So if I get a lot of likes on a post, then I'm, of course I'm going to say, oh, that they really like this topic, or they really like this type of post. I'm going to do more of it. One thing that I've done, I feel like ever since I started at this position, I look at my top 3 most successful posts at the end of the year, but I also look at my my worst performing content of the year as well. And the top performing content, that's affirming, because I could pretty much guess what's going to do well with our audiences, but I learned so much from what got like 0 engagements. And a lot of times what I find is you'll start to see a pattern, like, we were, for example, promoting a podcast as a shortened clip, like a shortened reel or a reel in Instagram. So it was just like a shorter, a snippet of what the entire podcast was. But this past year, like our 3 worst performing posts on Instagram were all reels that were promoting that podcast. So clearly, that's telling me that that type of content is not resonating with our audiences. Am I going to stop promoting that podcast? No, but we're going to present it in a different way that we think might resonate with the audiences more. So instead of putting it as a reel, we're going to make it a story. So we're going to just, learn from our content, learn from what our audience is telling us, and just iterate and try to do what might work. So much of social media is experimentation, right? So I'm constantly experimenting to see what, our audience likes. And once I figure that out, I do more of it. And when I find out what they don't like, I stop doing it. It's sort of that simple, and at the same time, not so simple, right?
Yeah, sometimes it can definitely feel like you're in a little bit of a toxic relationship in managing online communities sometimes. But like you said, I think there can be a lot of good lessons to be learned if you can look at it with an outside perspective on both your top and bottom performing content. I love that. We talked about how important it is to build a community when you're talking about growing your organic social. What are some best practices that you have in how to build a community through your social media?
Yeah, I think the thing is, I feel like authentic has been the word of the decade, right? For social, like year after year, we're talking about how it's important to be authentic. It's important to stay true to yourself. And the reason why I think we're still having that conversation to the point where authenticity almost sounds like a cliche, but it's not. Like, I just think it's a must, is like, I think there are a lot of maybe college programs or university department labs or centers or that are still trying to find what is authentic to them. Like, what does authentic mean to you, right? And so for MIT, it's like, math is our love language. We embrace days like, May the 4th be like Star Wars days, Pi Day, those are in our wheelhouse, right? I don't think I'm going to try, like, I don't know that if like, fit of the day, I don't think that's quite in our culture, but maybe if we can make it to where, we talk about what our robots are. I mean, you just have to like, you have to create content that is very, very authentic and true to your personality, to make that work. And if you're with a startup or a new company, you have a huge opportunity to kind of shape what is, what your culture is and what your personality is. But if you're, MIT is an old institution. Its voice and tone is going to be around, its culture, long after I'm not here anymore. So, you have to learn the personality of the organization. But, once you do, you just create content in what works for you, or you make it fit for you. And I think that's the thing that's still important. So, authenticity is not a trend. It's not cliche. It's just really, really, it's really important to discover that. And when you do, that's when your community surrounds it. Like you build a community around what you have in common with these people, like there are people out there that are into the research and our humor and our math jokes and, what we're doing here. And so that's who we want to attract. And when you attract like-minded people, that of course becomes a community. And that's more important than just, doing a really quick, like sweepstakes campaign or, I don't know, I'm having trouble, but just, something that they'll get like followers really quickly, just to say, if you want to win this prize, and then they want to win that thing, and then they don't really engage with your content anymore. That's not what you want to do, right? Or that's not what I want to do. I want to.
I think what you're talking about too is like when you jump in on those trends, right? And finding ones that are authentic to your brand. How do you think you can manage, or some things to ask yourselves when you're looking at a trend to try to determine if it could be compatible with the strategic goals and vision of your organization?
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like, the thing that's really important is you should know what the goals are, right? And you should know what those strategic the messages are, and you should know, what will be a fit. So I often say that if I have to like think too hard about a trend, or if I have to Google a connection, like if I'm like, oh, MIT and this person, or if I have to do a Google search, then chances are it's not a fit, because I'm working too hard to try to make it fit with a certain holiday or like a certain person. I think if something just comes to mind, like for instance, like International Cat Day, there's lots of different ways to interpret Cat Day, but we have these robotic cheetahs on campus that are very, very popular, that do really well. So in the past, for International Cat Day, we've done a video or something on the robotic cheetahs, which is totally in our wheelhouse. So if it's something that fits and you can make it your own and make it yours, I think that makes sense. But if you have to work too hard to try to find a fit, then you just pass. You don't have to force it.
Good advice. In looking ahead, do you think organic social is going to become easier or harder in the coming years?
Yeah, this is a tough question. So I don't foresee it becoming easier, because building a community in real life is hard too, right? There's no sort of quick way to build authentic connections. But I don't know about easier or harder, but I feel like it's going to become more important. There's a lot of spaces that are becoming excessively hard to find. Maybe your people or your folks or your passion, because maybe the algorithm is trying to do something different than that. But I think it's become more and more important in these spaces. And I'm going to bring up the authenticity again, but I think if you can really have that come across, it'll come across as a signal and not noise. And I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, so many people look at things like advertising as almost buying your way out of having to do organic. But I think we can all relate to brands that we follow, even if we're coming in through an ad. If you get to the page and there's no meaningful connections or engagement happening, I think the trust for the brand does go down. And so I think they both should work in tandem to help make your brand successful.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I think what works for the organic side will also work for the paid side, but you've already tested it with a focus group of your community. And so it's going to, I think, will be even more successful if you use the content on the paid side as well.
For the students that are listening, what advice do you have for them in building a career in social media?
Oh, have a thick skin. Come into it having a thick skin. Be ready to educate. There's so much education that comes along with this job that you would not believe. Like things that come natural to you or I, like, no, you wouldn't, don't, link to a PDF. Like that seems like a no-brainer, right? But there are a lot of people that will give you PDFs to post on your social media sites. So I would say, put on your educator hat, be open to educating people, and you're going to do a lot of managing up too, because there's a lot of people that are in supervisor and leadership positions, and social media is just going to get more and more important. And you have to learn how to translate what you see to those folks that don't know what they don't know, right? And so that could take that takes a lot of different types of skills. Like it takes how to convey things upward and manage upward and relate the data that you're seeing into meaningful exchanges with people who do not use social media. So
really being able to sell something, right? And be able to explain to someone who is not necessarily a social media user why this is valuable for the brand. Yeah. And that really can never be overstated because it's such an important skill for people in our jobs to have.
So important. And you don't think you need it, but you will need it. Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you want to add for the students that are listening?
No, I think I'm just excited that there are people that still want to make this a profession because there's a lot of, it's changed a lot and there's a lot of stuff happening right now, but I'm excited for people that want to make this a profession. I personally love social media and I love the internet. And so that's why I'm still doing this work. And yeah, I'm rooting for everyone that makes this their profession. So
yeah, we always have to hope the best is yet to come.
Yes. Oh gosh.
And social, here's hoping, but
for sure.
There's still positive things to be had for sure.
Yeah, I believe it.
Awesome. Well, Jenny, thanks so much for having this great conversation. Give me 1 second. I'm going to stop the recording.